podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Bjork, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Bjork and A.W. Schultz.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Factory of the Future. Today's episode, you are going to hear a thoughtful conversation all about total productive management. AW is recently giving a talk in Australia, so he's going to share some of those facts, and we're going to discuss what is great about total productive management, TPM, and why it's not working for the workforce today. So, AW, take us away.
Yes, thank you, Alexandria. I think it might be helpful just to give the audience just a little bit of history of what total productive management is. And it's not so much from difference from the Toyota production systems, but it's, probably the genesis goes then to the JIPM, Japanese Institute of Plant Maintenance. I can't remember all the acronyms, but it originally came to the United States around 2000s. And the idea is about creating a workforce of autonomy and motivation. It's great because it incorporates everybody in the facility to have a role on driving performance within that organization. And it's probably the one thing that attracted me within a career in manufacturing, because it is something that doesn't require a lot of upfront investment. Certainly time can be a factor into it, but from a project, asset management, other factors like that, it can be relatively started. That said, I was in Australia last week giving a workshop on total product management. I'm just going to call it TPM from now on because it's easier. What a lot of these people, they were all from Australia and New Zealand, and it led into a lot of discussion about where is it going and what's going on in the U.S. And it took me for a moment to reflect on it, and I just put some thought in before I came into it, because I kind of set the stage with it. Is that the U.S. has been doing TPM since around the 2000s. It became it was invented probably in I think it was the 1960s.
Wow.
But in today's age, this process, which can take, they say 18 months to get to, there's essentially 4 stages, but 36 up to 5 years is probably the most realistic, where you could see some of the benefits of it. And we see this today, that it's pretty uncommon that people want to drive that big, long project out. And I know you had some thoughts on that before we started, but go ahead.
Yeah. So like you informed me, and based on that article you were reading, if what AW found is that people are only staying in their jobs for 4 years, roughly, right? So if it takes 5 years to implement this, who is there to do this job when millennials are only staying 4 years? So I said, this is no surprise to me that's the longevity of someone's stay at a company. And on the flip side, from an executive level, you're not seeing executives even have an appetite for projects that take that long. Everybody wants instant gratification. Everyone wants it done now, today. What are we going to get today for doing this work that we did today? No one is working on 5-year projects, personally, professionally. It just seems like too long. I mean, that said, I would argue podcasting is a 5-year project. And excuse me, there's clear benefits to doing this, but I'd really love you to give me and the audience just an overview. If you had to give me what TPM is in 2 to 3 sentences, what would you say TPM is, just in case there's folks, because I know your audience is very educated on it. I know you've got a lot to say and a lot of experience with it, but for those of us who are maybe less familiar, could you please break
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Because it involves 100% of all your employees in the factory involved into it. It's an aspirational, well, they don't say aspirational, but it's also continuous improvement, zero defects.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to say it. But it's encompassing maintenance, operations, quality, safety, and how can they all merge and work together?
Hmm.
One thing that I see, I love the topic because it's something that it brings autonomy to the factory. And one thing I wanted to allude to is like, okay, so AW, it's not working. So what's the answer? And then I go, well, that's where we look at Industry 5.0, because creating that human-centric approach creates autonomy. And while TPM has got a structured approach, where I've seen there's a lot more, we'll call it like a hybrid approach to TPM, meaning that there's search off for their short wins. Because in a traditional TPM, you're starting at, there's 4 phases, but a lot of it goes into phases or the steps they call it in autonomy, and there's 7 of them. A lot of organizations are actually become more content just getting through the first 3 steps, which is mean they've got a process in place for cleaning, inspecting, and for lubrication of their equipment, and they see the benefits of it. In fact, I was joking when I was in Australia, and like, have you seen these phase 4 facilities and like what they're like? And I go, I've been in one. I've been in a couple. May not have been, titled as a phase 4, but the thing is fine as I talk with the community, most of these companies that reach that are actually not even in business anymore. Because the way we operate today, we're continuously changing things. So if you're in an operation that's been making widgets the same way for 100 years, either you've got a monopoly over your market or something's declining as far as your demand. And that's what changes a lot, because these factors have to be agile and be able to lift and shift. And that's kind of what also goes into Industrial 4.0 and 5.0, what I think makes TPM really, really hard if you're going on the traditional route.
So what you're suggesting, and I think it's a brilliant point. One of the drawbacks to this TPM system is that it doesn't allow for change quickly. Because if you change anything, you have to incorporate that into this whole TPM process. Correct?
Yes. You got to there is it's called the early management side of it, but you're going to go through the rigor of all those steps into it, and yeah, it takes time. So you're drawing the whole thing out, and almost, we talked about, there's no such thing as a 5-year plan anymore. It's that, I mean, everything I talk is 1 year, or what we're doing in the 90 days. What are we going to accomplish?
Right. The timeline with people today is just completely sped up. Opposite is with marriage. If you think of the history of people's relationships, like I heard some statistic, like in the 40s, people dated like 2 to 3, maybe 2 weeks to 9 months, and then they were married. Where no one's doing that. That's absolutely insanity in today's time. So it's weird that there's like an inverse relationship there. I'm not sure if it relates too much to this conversation, but we're willing to drag out relationships, but we want instant gratification everywhere else in our lives. Interesting. Okay. So
I was part of, when I was working as a regional TPM individual, and the way that this company offset was, I was doing the long-term stuff, and then I sat right beside a master black belt that was doing the short team stuff. And the master black belt loved working with me, because one of the things about Six Sigma is the last, the DMAIC process is how do you make it sustainable? And TPM was the way to, to keep that that bridge afloat, or
That's
the boat
cool.
afloat.
Yeah, boat afloat. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Bridges, hopefully not floating.
yeah.
Probably not anyway. Okay, so I guess what would be the bridge to these applying these TPM, the best practices of TPM, but in today's constrained time frame, right? So is there any way that you see possible to use these best practices, but in a way that fits with the workforce being at a job for average of 4 years, the appetite of companies to not, invest or wait long term for realized gains? What do you see there?
Well, I like the Six Sigma approach, or
Okay.
the Kaizens, just
Yep.
going out there doing short projects. I mentioned, doing up to step 3 in autonomous maintenance, clean,
Okay.
inspect, and lubricate. Having ownership on those assets can be done in a relatively short amount of time through a Kaizen event. Uh, there was another thing that was going through my mind. But the other thing is also understanding early management and like getting it right the first time, training up the employees so that they know how to run the equipment. And probably the most important way is finding ways to engage the employees, because I'm going back to the industry 5.0. That's the answer to sustainability, or
Yeah.
is incorporating and finding different ways to engage them. One of the things one project I did, and fortunate for me, I was promoted and moved on to something else. But when I was working at one factory, we divided out everybody into like teams. So it's like your shift meeting, is kind of those people kind of sitting around, and we just like, well, you're a team, and we developed this like rack and stack, and we were giving out a traveling trophy and a reward every month. And it just become, because I was the creator, but also the manager of it, all this data that's going in there. And we created these metrics, and there was, I mean, certainly those ones that weren't winning it that much, they weren't that interested, but some of the teams that were getting these awards and this recognition, it became just how to make work fun. And
Oh, the gamify thing, like we've talked about in the past, for sure, I'm seeing here. But what is the? I guess I'm trying to understand how this relates to the TPM. Is it? You're saying that people could bring the.
oh yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
good question.
Here.
So it's about showing engagement.
Okay.
So you have an idea for an improvement, and maybe you have that idea, and then you get more points if that idea actually gets implemented.
Okay.
Or your team, goes 30 days without a recordable or not, or an incident, or your efficiencies are, one of the tops in the facility. Just whatever we were trying to TikTok and drive performance, that became a metric or a KPI for the operators, and that became it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too.
So that's a core foundational concept of TPM, is essentially engaging the employees.
Yes,
So that's a big
absolutely,
core of it.
absolutely.
Thanks. That was my question there. I mean, if I think back on my career, the most successful projects or initiatives that I led were with people who are highly engaged. Why? Because I led the engagement and I pushed for it. So like, to piggyback off of what you were saying, I needed the drivers that I was overseeing early in my career to adhere to the regulations. Simple stuff, but not really. Seems it. You would expect it, but not really. So I started doing all these audits. I had to, because of the poor position we were in at the onset of my career at that company, the behaviors from before I existed there. And I started making a driver of the month club. Now, there was nothing about it. There was no reward other than your name was on the list. And it was in line with who I am as a person, right? So rather than being mean and singling people out who sucked, it was a nice way of singling people out who sucked because their name wasn't on the list. But it was really propping up the ones who were leading by example, right? So it started out, there was only one person who was on the Driver of the Month Club off the get-go. Out of 30 drivers, that's a lot. That's a lot of violations. And like, it was literally perfection. Like if you were on there, there was not an item you were deficient in all of the stuff. Eventually, all the drivers got on that list and stayed.
That's success.
That was incredible. And everyone felt so good about it, you know, like maybe there were drivers who had missed a month, but then they would get back on the next month or whatever. And I mean, it was so simple. It was literally so simple, putting people's names on the list and saying, you did a great job. That's it. Total change in behavior and reduction in liability just because of that. So that was really exciting. I think I'm gonna say that we're probably wrapping it up here on the total productive management conversation, but I do want to plant a seed for a future topic, and I want to get the audience involved in this idea of being solutions oriented. I think that some organizations are settling for less than in terms of what they're allowing their employees to bring to the table. And I think it would just make for a great topic, and it seems like it sort of fits in with this TPM management, that style and what have you. So maybe a future episode, stay tuned for things on employee management and solutions-oriented conversations.
Yeah, I think I've already got some stories about that where it's been. We're not going to give it away.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good stopping point, and thanks for letting me share my journey and my workshop that I did in Australia. And I think we're checking out here like finished goods.
Yeah, we're clocking out.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.